Secretary?
I just want to make sure that this is on the website. So between you and Cash and Blue, we accept and place on file.
No, okay, yes.
Check, so.
Time to start. Yeah, you're here, I'm here.
I'm here, you're here.
This person's name, cell phone number, cell phone carrier, just representative.
I'll be home.
Sorry, guys. I looked at the number of
And then they get a text.
That's right.
I think at one time it was. You have to find it. You have to fucking accept it. You would have to do accept it and plug it in. We have
How are you?
Good evening and welcome. This is the October 8th meeting of the Administration of Public Works Committee. A quorum is declared. Welcome.
We're ready to go.
I think our first item of business will approve minutes, and then we have a non-agenda citizen comment that we'll welcome at the beginning and then proceed with our agenda. As to the minutes of September 24th? Motion to approve the minutes? Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Potter, welcome. You're here to speak on a non-agenda item, so if you don't mind, we'll put you up front and center.
Appreciate the time to speak now. I've got other things to do this evening. Eric Potter, 7940 Foster Street. Do I have to use the microphone?
For television.
Please.
Do we have to use the TV? Because
It's for the purpose of just recording it as part of our public meeting.
you could turn the TV off. We can go to school. My name is Eric Potter, 7940 Foster Street. I've got a recording device. I've got a camera in my hand.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Point of order. I want to make certain that this is recorded. We've sat here and been recorded by this gentleman for a couple of weeks. I have no objection to that. This is
Right.
part of our transparency and part of the Open Meetings Act and part of establishing a record with the county, state, city, et cetera. So if you're not inclined to live by the rules, I would suggest you leave.
Then I suggest that you check the September 10th meeting online, ma'am. The September 10th meeting has inconsistencies with your video. So either you terminate your video, man, or you have me continue.
You have
Well, I think
technical
we'll-
difficulties. That's not what we're talking about.
I think we'll
Everybody
just
has-
continue with the
Technical
meeting,
difficulties.
assuming
Well, I'll
that
speak right into your microphone.
television's
My name is
on
Eric
and our
Potter,
mic is on.
7940 Foster Street. How much time do I have, ma'am?
3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Before I start, I'd like to serve some documents to Mr. Jones. Came here on May 29th. I addressed some issues that I had with your beach and how I was handled. I came here once again on September 10th. I was published in a publication with some inconsistencies. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I did another FOIA request, which is going to be wasting taxpayer dollars once again. I'm not going to be coming back to this board. I'm not going to be coming back to your city council. I'm going to give you my business card like I did to your corporation council. It has my personal address on it like I did with corporation council. I would like a written apology, and I'd like an invitation to come back and have a public apology by not only your mayor, but by your corporation council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
Phonetically, you said it correct. Thank you.
And does that conclude your statement?
I said thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, moving on. Items for consideration. City of Evanston payroll through September 23rd, 2012, $3,077,710.58.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Passes. Thank you. City of Evanston bills through October 9th, 2012, $6,121,870.42, and city credit card payments through the end of August, $133,583.23.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item A 3.1, approval of tire purchases from Wentworth Tire Service. Staff recommending approval of tire purchases for the last 3 months of this fiscal year in the amount of $13,000, and for 12 months for next fiscal year in the amount of $50,000 from Wentworth Tire Service in Bensonville, Illinois.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item A 3.2, approval of a tire repair contract with Wentworth Tire Service, authorizing our city manager to execute a 1-year contract with 3 one-year extensions of the contract for tire repair and recap services in the amount of $25,008 for year 1 to Wentworth Tire Service, again in Bensonville.
I will move approval. I have a question.
Second, Alderman Holmes.
I believe we had this discussion before, but there's not any more tire repair in our area in Evanston? There used to be one on Howard, I thought. There is still one.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the tire repair that we do at a retail level, meaning smaller vehicles, we do that in-house, so we have our own tire machine, and the tires for large vehicles is what we're talking about this evening. That's that service. So I believe I'm safe in saying the in-town tire repair shop is not capable of handling the large equipment.
Oh, okay.
Does that clarify?
Yeah. No, I don't, we used to own an 18-wheeler, and I know my husband used to get them repaired. So I'm just thinking, I thought that they did that on Howard, but it's okay. When was the last time we checked? I don't know.
Mr. Jeske, our fleet services manager, is here, can discuss what we did as far as checking locally.
Good evening, Lonnie Jeske, Manager Fleet Services. When we put this out for bid, of course, we went through Pioneer Press, all the local, and the Chicago Tribune. We also consulted with the Evanston Business Directory, which is online, to take a look. We also made some inquiries about the larger type tires. We could not find one.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jeske.
Thank you.
Alderman Rainey.
Madam Chair, I'm going to suggest that we be a bit more aggressive and perhaps send out a letter. There is a new tire repair service on Oakton, next door to the Shell. They only do tires. And also the place on Howard Street. If you could just make an inquiry, written inquiry, and get a response from them. I mean, there was confusion earlier about auto parts, and the auto parts store in Howard is awaiting the opportunity to bid again because that didn't work out so well.
Right. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. A3.3, approval of a contract with L. Marshall, Inc. for water utility roof replacement in the amount of $133,000, funding from the Water Fund Capital Improvement Account.
Move approval.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes. Thank you. A3.4, approval of engineering services for a feasibility study of alternative stormwater management techniques with Hane Associates. City staff recommending that we execute an agreement for services for a feasibility study with Hane Associates in Chicago, an amount not to exceed $24,946.24. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. A3.5, approval of tree planting purchase from Suburban Tree Consortium for fall planting. Staff is recommending that we approve the purchase of 155 trees and planting service for 50 of those trees from the Suburban Tree Consortium in the amount of $38,864 with funding from our General Fund Parks Forestry Division account. All in favor? Alderman Rainey.
Madam Chairman, I've had conversations with the Vice President at St. Francis Hospital regarding their participation in aiding us in replacing some of the ash trees that we had to remove all along Oakton. And I'm wondering where that is at this moment, and do you need my help?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Paul D'Agostino, Superintendent of Parks, Forestry, and Facilities Management. We are moving forward with St. Francis Hospital on replacement of trees there. They're not on this list because they're actually going to be purchasing the trees for us, and we're going to be planting them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. D'Agostino. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. 3.6 is approval of Centennial Park Lagoon Professional Design Services contract with Kettle Camp and Kettle Camp. Staff is recommending that we authorize our city manager to execute the contract with Kettle Camp and Kettle Camp for a total cost of $90,735.
Second.
All in favor? Alderman Rainey.
Madam Chair, I just want to point out, this is a real live Evanston small business, live here, work here, kids go to school here. It's just refreshing to see from time to time.
Right. On a homegrown project that's significantly funded by a local benefactor.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All good. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A4 is approval of a change order for lighting power centers. Staff asking that we authorize the city manager to execute change order number 2 to the contract for the Church Street Improvement Project to Landmark Contractors in the amount of $31,590 to expand the scope of the contract to include replacement of the street light power centers throughout the city.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Alderman
Could
Reed.
we have a member of our staff explain to some of us and the general public what this will mean in terms of power, lighting?
The improvement,
What's the
what
impact?
is this improvement and what is the impact of it?
Okay.
A member of our engineering staff, Rajiv Dahal, will.
Mr. Dahal.
Rajiv Dahal, Senior Traffic Engineer. We have 109 power centers in the city. To date, we have replaced, they are about 25 to 30 years old. So to date, we have replaced 41 power centers throughout the city. With this purchase, we have already purchased 50 more power centers. Under this contract, we'll install 45 more. 5 will be set aside for troubleshoot other areas, which will leave us about 18 more power centers citywide to complete.
Does this have to do with street lighting?
Yes, this power center controls the street lights in a certain area.
So when neighborhoods have their lights out, it's sometimes because the power center.
Yes. It's like a fuse box in a house. If the fuse box is old, if something goes wrong, then you'd have to replace the fuse box.
Are all the power centers now new for this?
No, we still have 18 more to purchase to complete the upgrade citywide.
Alderman Holmes?
Do you know if the center, the power center between Green Bay, the Emerson, Green Bay Ridge area there, because I got lots of calls about that one, and I know that was one of the issues with the streetlights going out in that area. Do you know if that one's being replaced? It's already replaced? Okay, great.
Great. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Dahal. I believe that one's already been voted upon. A5, approval to accept and place on file the single audit for fiscal year 2011. And this is the single audit for nearly $10 million that comes to the city of Evanston from federal funding.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 8.6 is post-issuance compliance procedures for tax-exempt bonds. Staff is asking that we approve this to be adopted and placed on file, applicable to any bond issues after January 1st, 2012.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? A7 is Resolution 69R12, authorizing the city manager to execute a transition of services agreement with Erie Family Health Center regarding the Evanston Children's Dental Clinic.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
With enthusiasm. Thank you. A8, we have a speaker on this one, but let's move it in for discussion. Ordinance 109-0-12, amending Title III, Chapter 4, Section 6 of the City Code to create a liquor license classification for craft breweries.
Second.
Mr. Gilbert, are you here to address this agenda item? Welcome.
Thank you.
Please join us.
My name is Josh Gilbert. I'm the owner of Temperance Beer Company. And where'd that come from, right? And I'm just here to, in case anyone had any questions about what a tap room is. Basically, quickly, it's sort of like if you've gone to a winery and there's a place where you can go and taste the products that are being manufactured there and, interact with the people who produce it. So.
Under this ordinance, it limits the volume of alcohol that could be sold in one package. Does this permit the sale of growlers, the jugs?
It does, yeah, because those are 64 ounces.
All right. Any questions?
Nothing about this.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Didn't think so.
All right, thank you.
Same with 8.9, we have a speaker on this agenda item, but that is ordinance 112-0-12, increasing the number of Class C licenses for Signature Food Solutions doing business as Chicago's home of chicken and waffles.
Second.
Mr. Johnson, you're here tonight. Welcome. Fine, thank you. How are you?
Okay.
Good.
Does anyone have any questions?
You'll just give us a quick update?
Oh, okay. We look like we're on target for December 1st. We only have one obstacle, and that's the gas company. Hopefully they will be out on the 10th to change our gas lines. If that's done, we can get our patio poured in, and we can pretty much get everything wrapped up. Other than that, I would just like to say thank you to Steve, Paul, and Jeff for all your assistance and everyone else. It's been really a great help to us making this project come to reality. We do have a couple of our staff that was at a couple of my other restaurants that will be moving into Evanston. Two young men there. One is my son, David, Demetrius. Demetrius has been with me for 5 years. He's moving into Evanston. My son will be moving into Evanston. And our manager, Gabby, who actually is a resident of Evanston, so everybody knows that I understand we're going to have Evanston resident working for us. We probably will start looking for employment right around the first week in November. So, Alderman Brathwaite, I'll probably get with you, whoever you direct me to help set up a team so we can start really getting into the heart and soul of Evanston and looking for some good employees. We're looking for about a good 45, 50 employees. It's a pretty big operation.
We do have a question, Mr. Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Alderman Burris?
Actually, more of a suggestion for both Alderman Braithwaite and yourself. Youth Job Center, great opportunity.
Okay.
And they do an amazing job of prepping people to be job ready.
Okay.
And just a great executive director, great program. So maybe a good place to tap into.
Okay. All of our principals, they have completed their Bassett certificates. That's done, and everyone else will be being Bassett approved, working for me. We have started our new menus. The proofs are out. It's showing Evanston as the premier restaurant, the jazz night, and et cetera. So we're on target for some good things.
Sounds like all cylinders firing at this point, so
Firing full steam
we look
ahead.
forward to it. And so welcome to you and welcome, gentlemen, to Evanston. We'll be glad to have you with us.
All right.
Yeah. Great.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, we are suspending the rules.
We will be suspending the rules at council. We hope to issue the license tonight. Or proposing to. Mhm. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We have one item for discussion, presentation from Northwestern students on collaborative composting. Welcome, Director Robinson.
Good evening, Chairman Grover, AMPW committee members. I'm Suzette Robinson, the Director of Public Works, and I am honored to have two Northwestern students, Jody and Tiffany, and also Catherine, who is the sustainability coordinator. They worked on a study project for Public Works. This is something we would have never had an opportunity to do ourselves in-house. So in speaking with Catherine and her pulling together Northwestern students to look at this. They did a presentation to me, and it was fantastic. And I thought you and the rest of the community should hear from them as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Catherine so she can tell you more about the project.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Catherine Hurley, Sustainable Programs Coordinator. As Director Robinson said, I'm so happy tonight to just take a few minutes of your time to have a presentation by 2 students from Northwestern University who are from the Engineers for a Sustainable World, which is one of many organizations on campus. And this project, as Director Robinson mentioned, was a collaborative effort between the Public Works Department, Office of Sustainability, and the students. And they actually came and inquired about a year ago saying that people on campus are really interested in supporting composting and how could they be of help. And as Director Robinson said, there's always more projects than we have time to do. So we collaborated and we all discussed, and the students are here tonight to talk about some interesting research and data collection that they've done to help both evaluate some of the current things that the city's doing and also help inform what types of things we want to be doing in the future. So Jody Benning-Keening, who's been what I would call the project manager, and as well as Tiffany Sevilla, who have worked hard on this project. And we're going to have them give a quick presentation, and then if you have any questions or comments, we'd be happy to hear those at the end. So I'll turn it over to the ladies.
Hi, thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you. Again, my name is Jody, and this is my team member, Tiffany. So I guess we'll just jump right in. We call ourselves the Evanston Composting Initiative. We've been blessed to collaborate with you all and some of our own team members back at Northwestern. So again, Catherine gave a great overview of what we've been doing, but essentially we wanted to, before implementing any kind of programming, really analyze what is going on in Evanston already, how effective are the programs that we already have in place, and what are some of the community attitudes around composting before we implemented any kind of project. So I'm going to let Tiffany talk about our 2 different surveys.
So, hello, my name is Tiffany again. There was one survey where we mostly collected data from all Evanston residents in general, and that information was separate from a survey targeting people who had already received composting bins from a previous program that distributed these. And all of these responses were solicited from the City of Evanston's sustainability webpage.
Yeah, so again, the Public Works Department already has a great program in place whereby citizens can come and ask to receive a free compost bin, and those were converted from the old garbage bins. So when we switched out the garbage bins, we decided to reuse those items and have them be a useful tool. So basically, a number of hundred people received them, and so we wanted to follow up with them about how that was going, and that was primarily targeted in Survey B. So if people had received a bin already, we asked that they fill out the Survey B form, and we received 67 responses, 77.6% of which were currently composting with that bin. And then we also wanted to reach people who hadn't necessarily received the bin already and see, were they composting with their own bin, or were they not composting, and why weren't they composting? So again, we targeted those people via the listserv and just by emailing different environmental organizations in Evanston to ask that they send it to people on their listservs as well. So I guess the short form version, what exactly did we find out? Of the people that we talked to, 70% roughly were composting, and that was to be expected because people who care about composting would obviously fill out the survey. But remarkably, we got 30% of people who weren't composting, and that's also interesting information. We also wanted to identify what else were they doing with their organic waste. Were they using City of Evanston's yard waste pickup, which is really crucial to understand because that's where I think we lose a lot of money in terms of moving that waste instead of getting payback for like recycling and stuff. So a number of the people were using Evanston's various forms of yard waste pickup, as you can see the numbers there. So for the people who are already composting, they identified a number of ways that they felt they could be supported in their composting efforts. The top 5 were receiving free or partially subsidized bins, which is a program already in place. Additionally, access to literature. Interestingly, a curbside program, we just threw that in there because we thought it would be interesting data to look at, and there was probably more support for that than we thought. Also attending a community workshop and having a consultation. So those are different ways we can support people who are already composting. But with regards to people who aren't composting already, paying less for garbage pickup, which is interesting because that's something that's already inherent in the system of you are able to go down to the smaller size bin. So if people are made aware of that incentive already in place, that would be an interesting place to start. Also receiving a tax credit, other free or partially subsidized compost equipment, which again we already have, and then having someone come and set it up for them was another popular response. Obviously, having some help is crucial. Further interest, again, participating in curbside program of kitchen scraps, that was remarkably, people were in support of that. Which is probably not something that's going to happen immediately, but just for very future down the road, something to look into. Obtaining different composting supplies, attending a community workshop on composting, pamphlets on composting. I know the Office of Sustainability also already has some great literature on that, so just working on getting that more widely available. And then having my finished compost picked up, which there would be some legal issues with that, but it's just interesting to know that people were thinking about that. So again, just briefly, some recommendations that we might have going forward. Having citizens be aware of the economic incentives that are already in place we think that's really crucial. Also, our survey, we received some great data, but it would be interesting to follow up again with the people who already received the bin. As you saw, we only got 67 responses, and that's partly due to the fact that a lot of people hadn't received their bin at the time when we surveyed initially. Also, it'd be interested to see after they've done it a season, how is that working out for them. And then many people are composting according to the survey, but yet they're still having their yard waste picked up, which is creating a financial burden for the city. And so finding more ways for people to compost their yard waste would be a good thing to look into. Making sure that the composting education that we already have is being accessible, and continuing the free bin program. And then just briefly, our last slide, what are we as Northwestern students involved in ESW looking forward to in the coming months? We recently collaborated with McCormick School of Engineering and their design program to look into redesigning the bin. So we have those designs in place, and we're looking forward to testing them. Also working with Inspire Media to create new and fun educational tools surrounding composting, and then promoting the use of the composting literature that we already have. And then also another initiative that we're looking forward to in the next couple of months is working with NU Roosevelt, which is Northwestern's policy center, and looking to investigate ways to create maybe a composting ordinance, which we recognize is not currently on the books necessarily, aside from what's with Cook County and so forth, and other ways to look at composting policy. So thank you so much. Is there any
thank you,
questions?
Jody and Tiffany, very much for all your work, for your contributions to our discussion of composting, for the great information and the recommendations. Any questions? Alderman Rainey and then Alderman Holmes.
I have a bin, a compost, the old trash can. I had no idea you were doing a survey. How did everybody who got a bin supposedly get a survey?
No, and that's why we want to redo Survey B. We just we put it out on the sustainability website, and we sent it over the sustainability listserv. But one thing we do recognize with this data is that everyone who received the bin did not get the email survey, and so there was a little bit of trouble with coordinating, like accessing the information of people who got the bins. So I think you've done a really great job of collecting that contact information, and so hopefully in the next couple of months we can send out the survey again and then have better results or more complete data on that.
Also, I know we should mulch our grass clippings on our grass, but we don't do that. We put it in our yard waste can.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like my grass clippings in with my compost. So I'm not going to be very helpful in reducing the yard waste collection. It's just nasty. If you have a big field and you can dry it out or something, I guess grass clippings are great, but I just don't like mixing it in.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, like, at Northwestern we would say, or within ESW we would say, that's a great opportunity for design. So perhaps we can look into either through ESW or DFA a different way. Like, that's a great point, and perhaps there's a way we can design a bin that is better suited to.
Well, or I could share my grass clippings if somebody would like to come by and other than the city.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Holmes?
Do we know how many composting bins that we have out in terms of residents that have the city bins?
Yeah, about 600.
600 out?
That's great.
And how many more do we have available, converted bins? 150 yet. Call now to get your composting bin. Supplies won't last.
And just
311.
one other thing to mention too is that part of this project was also a little bit to pilot some of the survey questions, because we thought it would, in addition to the survey for people that had a bin, to also make the other survey more widely accessible. But before we went, sending it out to 25 or 30,000 emails and mailing anything, that we wanted to get some questions together and see what the feedback was. And so one of the other next steps is for the team to evaluate the questions we used in sort of our pilot round one and see if we missed anything, if anything needs to be updated, and then continue to make that available. But we used an online survey tool that the city owns, so it's very easy for us to make updates to that and then continue to have that be an opportunity to get feedback.
Right.
Alderman Burris?
Two questions. One, explain what DFA is. I know what it is, but for everyone else.
Oh, yes. DFA is Northwestern students started. It's called Design for America, and they start with big design-oriented questions and then narrow down either a strategy or a product that can be used to correct a design problem. So,
Fair enough. And then, Director Robinson, can you tell everybody how they can get those last 150 bins going fast?
All supplies last.
Yeah, 311.
Call 311, put it in order for your composting bin. I think, too, what you'll find is you do a survey, and the survey itself gets folks thinking about composting if they're perhaps not even in our program. So if you could expand the survey, we might find that we can tap into unknown demand for composting. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Really, truly, thank you. Thanks. Any other business for Administration and Public Works tonight? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Don't forget to announce the next meeting.
And our next meeting is Planning and Development at 7:15 in 45 minutes. Thank you.
Plenty of developments ready to get there. Thanks.
Although it's 7:14. We ready to go? Are we all set? Okay, good evening, everyone. You could all, do you need to sign in? Sure. Sorry. That's okay. Welcome to the Planning and Development Committee meeting, Monday, October 8th, 2012. It's 7:15, and we have a quorum. First item on our agenda is approval of regular meeting minutes of September 24th, 2012. Do I have a motion to approve? Is there a second? Second. Are there any changes, corrections? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. I wanted to announce we have several people signed up to speak tonight. We are not taking citizen comment tonight on landlord licensing. That is no longer in front of our committee. That is at City Council, so I hope you will all sign up to speak on the City Council agenda. We will, pardon me?
Which is right after this.
Yeah, which is right after this. 5 minutes after we're finished, the City Council starts. Okay, 5 minutes after this committee is finished, the City Council will start. If you've signed up on our agenda to speak on landlord licensing, it is no longer in front of this committee, so you would be speaking at City Council. In 5 minutes? No. 5 minutes after the end of this meeting.
Speaking will be before the council.
That's correct. It's citizen comment at the City Council meeting.
But you should sign up on the other sheet.
Right. There's another sheet out there for citizen comment for the City Council, so be sure to sign up for it. A different sheet.
Which sheet do you have to sign in for the city council?
There will be a City Council sign-up sheet outside on the table.
It's out there now, so.
Are there any other questions about speaking at City Council? Okay.
So just make sure you're on the other sheet out there.
Yeah. So we want everyone who wants to speak, but at the appropriate meeting. The first item on our agenda is P1. It's Ordinance 72012, amending the zoning ordinance, residential building height, dormer size and location, half stories, accessory structure height, and legal nonconformities in the R1, R2, R3, R4, and R4A districts. And we have a staff presentation. Melissa Klotz is here from zoning to address this.
Good evening, Melissa Klotz, zoning planner. The current regulations in the zoning ordinance are sometimes too restrictive and other times too permissive when in regards to building height and bulk. The proposed regulations will encourage appropriate building height and bulk while still allowing a diversity in design so that architects who currently utilize creative designs are no longer allowed to effectively add a third story to single-family residences. The most notable change will be in how we regulate height. We currently regulate height with a mean measurement, and we are looking to go to a peak measurement so that it will be 2.5 stories or 35 feet in height to the peak of the structure. In addition to that, we will change the definition of half-story so that it will apply to attic styles where it is above the full second story of the home and below the slope of a roof. In addition to that, to regulate the bulk, we will allow up to a 3-foot exterior knee wall on attic-style roofs so that these attic-style roofs that with a gable or hip roof are allowed to have the same relative bulk size as other roofs such as gambrel or mansard roofs. Added to that, we are looking at eliminating the substandard lot size. Currently, substandard lots are limited in their height. So if you have a substandard lot that is next to a lot of normal size, that home would be limited in its height and allow the home next to it that could have a maximum height to be substantially larger. Also, our current dormer regulations apply to dormers on all stories. We are looking at changing that to apply only to half stories that are above the first full 2 stories of a home. Also, the dormer regulations will no longer be different for sides versus front facades of homes. Instead, it will be the same regulation of a maximum limit of 30% to all wall lengths. To keep with conformity, we're looking at changing accessory structure peak heights to peak heights rather than mean heights as it currently is regulated, so that accessory structures are measured in the same way as primary structures. And finally, we would like to address some of the nonconformities that exist with regards to height. We are proposing that all structures that are in any federal or local historic district are a historic landmark or are over 50 years old would be considered grandfathered in and considered conforming structures in regards to height, so that if they are damaged by natural forces only, they are allowed to rebuild without asking the zoning administrator for a rebuild letter. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Melissa. Did that go in front of the Preservation Commission? I see references to the Plan Commission on here. I'm just wondering if Preservation had a chance to weigh in on
Staff
on this.
discussed it with the staff liaison to the Preservation Commission, and he said he did speak with Preservation Commission members, and they are on board with that.
Okay. Okay, Alderman Nguyen?
I think this is a very good change. I've been on the council long enough for us to have made one prior change to this so that we actually were measuring things more like a normal person measures things and not counting the basement that was above ground. That's how we used to do it. We didn't count that. And then you started from the base of the first floor. So I think that this continues on that earlier change that we made in making this logical and fair for everyone. And making things so that we don't have odd loopholes in the law that creative architects can create unusual structures from. So I think this is a good change.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I have a letter here from a very creative architect who would take exception to your comment. And I want to read you a paragraph. I asked this person to analyze this ordinance because I practice law without a license, but not architecture. So, Melissa, perhaps you can correct any misstatements here. This is just one short paragraph. If the ordinance is to go forward, it should be made absolutely clear in the ordinance that all existing properties that may be impacted by the language of the ordinance be grandfathered, not just those in the historic district. The way the ordinance is proposed, if my house were damaged by a storm or fire, I would not be able to rebuild the roof as it is now. The ordinance would prevent me from doing so. This would be a prejudicial ordinance favoring those who can afford to live in the historic district. I take exception to that prejudice. Is that true? Not all properties who currently exceed these dimensions, were they to be destroyed, could not be rebuilt in kind?
It's a little more complicated than that. All of those properties would be considered legal nonconforming at this point. In the case that a property was damaged and it did not meet the criteria discussed in the memo as one of the historical properties, then the property owner would have the opportunity to request a rebuild letter from the zoning administrator. That's a clause that is currently in the zoning ordinance, and that allows the zoning administrator to look at that property on a case-by-case basis. Current practice is that the zoning administrator quite often grants that, but it does allow us to look at each specific case.
Well, I don't like that piece of it at all. If a property exists now as a legal property, and this person did go before the zoning board years ago to be allowed to build what he has because of the FAR issue, and it's an old property, old home with a narrow lot, I think absolutely we should insist those homes be grandfathered in. Absolutely. And so that will be my position when we get to that point.
If it is an older home that is over 50 years old, it would also be granted in.
But I don't care whether it's 10 years or 100 years. If it is what it is legally, then it needs to be allowed to be restored to that should anything happen.
Alderman Wilson.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. That was my concern as well, and pretty much my only concern. I think that we should actually take the step of modifying the language to allow for current, as of the date of the ordinance, that the home could be replaced at the existing dimensions, et cetera. So I would move that we amend the ordinance to change it from historic district or 50 years old to any home that's legally non-conforming as of the date of passage of the ordinance. And I assume Mr. Farrar can carefully craft that language to reflect what I'm trying to say.
I understand.
I'd second it.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Okay, then the ordinance as amended.
Should we vote on it?
Yes.
The amendment?
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. All right, so first we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, do you want to restate your amendment, Alderman Wilson?
I move that we amend the proposed ordinance such that any legally any home that exists legally as of the date of the passage of the ordinance would be grandfathered in the event of future damage or destruction.
Okay, all those in favor? Oh, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we'll go on to the full ordinance as amended.
I move approval of the full ordinance as amended.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. We're moving on now to item PD1, which is a discussion of short-term home rentals, and we have several people signed up to speak on this. You'll have 3 minutes apiece to speak, and I will. This is PD1. PD1. Yes, PD1.
That's building height.
No, P1 is building height. PD1 is short-term home rentals. We're on the Planning and Development Committees. Yeah.
The pink one.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Let's see. We have Mark Rosati, Maureen O'Donnell, and then Jackie Black. And may I have your name and your home address?
Yes, Mark Rosati, 2509 Ashland in Evanston. Again, since I was here on the 24th, I won't go into all my statements again, but I do believe that we currently are facing having 2 of the 16 houses on our block renting to transients, even though we're zoned R1. We believe that this is an issue of safety, security, and quality of life in the neighborhood. We think that zoning laws are meant to encourage predictability and sustainability, stability rather, We certainly would not have moved into our home if we had known the next door was a hotel or an advertised B&B or something of that nature. So this has changed the character of the block, and we are in close proximity to elementary schools and middle schools. So again, we do encourage enforcement of the existing laws, as I understand them, to prohibit these sort of transient rentals in areas zoned R1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maureen.
Good evening. My name is Maureen O'Donnell, and I live next door to 2515 Ashland, where the owner has advertised her home and individual rooms in her home for overnight rentals on Airbnb.com and on Craigslist. Since the last committee meeting on this, I became aware of a story in the Chicago Sun-Times and the Chicago Tribune about a man who met his roommates on Craigslist, and he was arrested and charged with their double murder. DeJuan Pratt is accused of killing 64-year-old Gary Brown and 48-year-old Chun Chow Lee. They were found stabbed to death in the apartment they shared in the 6400 block of North Sacramento, a few miles from Evanston. Mr. Pratt looked like a good person on paper. He'd graduated with a double major in business administration and marketing from Ohio's Central State University. He moved in with the murder victims on August 23, 5 days before their bodies were found, repeatedly stabbed. He's accused of using their credit cards for a spending spree in Las Vegas. One of the victims, Mr. Brown, was a former prosecutor and city attorney for the city of Kankakee. Precisely the kind of person one would think could suss out a problem tenant. I am very, very concerned about the use of Craigslist and Airbnb for advertising for short-term tenants. Short-term tenants cannot be properly vetted for criminal background or for sexual predators. We have 3 schools a very short distance from the home at 2515 Ashland, Kingsley, Haven, and St. Athanasius, which is only 20 feet away from their front door. I urge you to consider this ordinance very carefully. Our sense of safety is so important to us, and this is damaging it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Jackie Black, Greg Richards, and Jeannemin Wu, I believe. Oh, okay. All righty. All right, Greg Richards, are you here, Greg? Just want to remind everyone you have 3 minutes to speak.
I won't need that long. My name is Greg Richards. I live at 2529 Ashland Avenue. I did speak at the last committee meeting a few weeks ago, and not having heard anything new yet or any new arguments in favor or against the issue, I'm going to yield my time. But let me just reiterate that I support the comments of Mr. Rosati and Ms. O'Donnell, that I think the vacation rentals represent a neighborhood safety issue and fundamentally affect the character of our neighborhood. And so I want to state again that I'm against allowing that activity. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I know I'm mispronouncing this, and I'm sorry, but Jeannemin Wu, 1731 Madison, are you here? Okay, so, okay, you don't want to speak, okay. David Reynolds is here, Julie Kaler, and Jim Mullenix.
My name is David Reynolds. I live at 204 Davis Street. There must be something in our water here in Evanston that a sister issue to bed and breakfasts has come up at this time. In considering vacation rentals, it follows naturally to consider the existing B&B ordinance because these 2 types of uses are so similar. In fact, they're almost identical for these reasons. There is no requirement in the existing B&B ordinance for the owner to be present when guests have rented accommodations. There doesn't appear to be any requirement that the B&B actually serve breakfast. There are no parking requirements for B&Bs except that guests not park in the front or side yard. There are no limits to the number of parties or special events that can be held. There are no limits to the number of B&Bs or vacation rentals on a block or in a particular area. The only real present difference is that a B&B requires a special use from the Zoning Board of Appeals with final approval by the City Council. The special use requirement doesn't seem to be much of a barrier, especially in light of the fact that the Zoning Board of Appeals denied the special use application for the B&B at 300 Church Street, but the Council approved it over their denial. The real issue at the heart of B&Bs and vacation rentals is whether we want this kind of commercial rental in our residential areas. People purchase houses or apartments in Evanston with the expectation of living in a residential environment, not one infused with commercial uses. While that expectation is supported by the stringent requirements for conducting a home occupation, it is eroded by allowing B&Bs or vacation rentals. Families buy houses where there are other families and in neighborhoods they find good for raising a family. Many families with younger children have testified, both at 2 other times in the past when B&Bs were proposed and at your last meeting, that they do not want to live next door to a rental facility with unknown people constantly coming and going. People buy houses where they feel comfortable and secure. This isn't complicated. It's simply the way it is. Evanston wants and needs young families. They're our health and our future. Why would we want to do something that discourages them? If a B&B or vacation rental could move in next door or down the block, that is a strike against Evanston. The detriments of B&Bs and vacation rentals far outstrip benefits, if there are any. Is it wise to allow something which benefits one homeowner financially at the expense of the rest of the neighborhood? I don't believe it makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Julie Kaler and Jim Mullinex.
This evening, Attorney Kim Novy and I emailed to each and every one of you on the City Council a memorandum of law that explains my organization's position regarding the vacation rental ordinance and how there are existing municipal ordinances on the books already that prohibit the renting of rooms within a home and also the wholesale rental of a house for short periods of time. This memorandum, it comes equipped with several exhibits that we have attached, and it was emailed to you at approximately 5 o'clock this evening. I encourage you to look at it, read it, and call myself or Kim Novy if you have any questions regarding that memorandum of law. What it sets out is our explanation as to how the codes on the books already prohibit this type of rental of a home. It is what the city seems to be focusing on is your Chapter 5, the lodging establishment portion of your city code. And that is simply a red herring. It's a rabbit hole that you do not have to go down in order to prohibit the type of behavior that was going on in Alderman Rainey's ward. The rental of a home on an overnight basis is a prohibited home occupation under Chapter 2 of your municipal code. It is not something that is allowed in the absolute definition of home occupation. It prohibits any type of establishment that offers shelter or lodging. No person can, from the confines of their home, begin to operate a business which allows for overnight guests. It is right there in your municipal code already, and that code can be enforced. So if someone opens up an unlicensed B&B and doesn't offer breakfast, which, why would anyone in this town operate a B&B when they can just as easily forget the breakfast and open up a vacation rental, advertise it on Craigslist or on Airbnb, and make money hand over fist, which these people seem to be doing. There is a location on a house on our block, not the 2515 that is next door to me, but just down further next to the golf course, that has 87 testimonials from previous rentals. 87 people have rented there. Why would anyone go to a hotel in Evanston which, by the way, I'm sure that industry does not want any vacation rental ordinance either. Why would anyone go to a B&B in Evanston when they can just get on Airbnb and for $50 a night rent a nice room next to the golf course? So it's bad for people who are running legitimate businesses, who have worked hard to obtain the licenses that they deserve and gotten the one B&B license that is in Evanston, or got their hotel, running a legitimate hotel, to have my neighbor offering her home for $50 a night. It just doesn't make sense, and it is prohibited by your already existing ordinances, as explained in the memo. I encourage you to read it and contact us if you have any questions whatsoever. We'd be happy to walk you through it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Mullinex.
Good evening. Again, I was here 2 weeks ago along with other people that have already spoken out against this. And for sake of time, I will reiterate those comments made by others simply by saying that I think on page 7 of the memo, and I don't know if you have had the opportunity, but I've had the opportunity many, many years ago when Kim Novy was a prosecutor at 26th in California, and I was a young public defender at 26th in California, having to come up against her in court. She's incredibly bright, as is Julie Kaler, who happens to be my wife. I live at 2525 Ashland. Kim lives down the road, and Kim and Maureen and Mark live right in between the home, 2515 Ashland, which the owners want to turn into a transient hotel. On page 7 of the memo, it talks about certain businesses are outright prohibited by the statute that deals with home occupations. Basically, the memo says that in R1 zone districts, there are only certain permitted uses, of which none of these apply, to allow a transient hotel or a vacation rental or a bed and breakfast. There are special uses, none of which apply. It deals with home occupations, and it says certain businesses are outright prohibited by the statute, regardless of whether they fall within the definition of a major or minor occupation because of their nature. These businesses, quote, impair the integrity of the residential district in which they are located. I'm going to repeat that. Impair the integrity of the residential district in which they are located. I think every person that has come up here tonight and 2 weeks ago has addressed that very issue. The issue being what this type of business, and make no mistake about it, that's exactly what it is. It is a business that is located next to a residential home where there are children, across the street from St. A's Grammar School, 2 blocks away from Haven and Kingsley. That's what we're dealing with, and that's when I spoke 2 weeks ago about the purpose behind zoning regulations. This is what it addresses. I can't think of a better way of ending our petition to you to simply enforce the existing laws. You do not need to make any further laws in order to address this issue. There are laws on the books, as outlined in Ms. Novy and Ms. Kaler's Memorandum of Law. Enforce those laws and prohibit this type of transient hotel in residential neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that closes citizen comment. And I'll open it up for committee discussion. Alderman Rainey.
Well, I absolutely oppose the comments that there's no difference between a bed and breakfast and a vacation rental. There's every difference in the world. A vacation rental is a house that has virtually, at least my knowledge of vacation rentals, there's no owner present. There's no oversight. There's no supervision. There's no front desk. There's no breakfast provided. There's nothing provided. You take your garbage out, put it in the garbage can, you make the bed yourself. There's absolutely no concierge of any kind whatsoever. It is a free-for-all. It's been, it could be different, and it is different in other communities, but in the city of Evanston, it's absolutely a free-for-all. People are rented to. No one, the owner has no idea of who's coming in other than the people that sign whatever online registration there is. And we've seen it on Dobson, where 8, 10, 12 people come, one night, 18 cars, parties and kegs of beer, et cetera, et cetera. They are advertised as party houses, and, I think it depends to some extent on where they are, but we've had not one good experience, and I don't know how we can do any oversight of this kind of thing. I would be willing to consider a vacation rental for, let's say, a month or 3 weeks or 2 weeks, but not the way we have it set up right now. I agree with all of the testimony that I believe that our current laws govern this. I think it is a home occupation, and it needs to be, our law needs to be enforced, and it's not being enforced. And I realize we hit a brick wall at the Zoning Board of Appeals. It was the most uncomfortable, difficult meeting I have ever attended, the Zoning Board of Appeals, where this issue came. And then we've been to court. There's an attorney involved, took us to court, and that didn't go well either. And I know there's some difference of opinion as to what happened there, but we have not met with any success in the various efforts we've made. So I hope that we can revisit the current laws regarding home occupation.
Thank you all. Chairman Fisk, first, thanks for letting me join the committee at the podium tonight to discuss this agenda item. I think it's more than interesting, as Mr. Reynolds pointed out, that the City Council has reaffirmed our interest in allowing bed and breakfasts, B&Bs in Evanston, but find ourselves then in more than a quandary with regard to these short-term rentals, which have the flavor and nature of bed and breakfast, but don't operate quite in the same way, and it has a lot to do with the supervision in the house. What's come up tonight, though, is the question of the legality and application of our existing ordinances, and perhaps, Mr. Farrar, if you could join us and help us understand how you've been frustrated in your efforts to prosecute a citation of a different case involving a short-term rental, and more specifically, how our home occupation code does or does not apply to a short-term rental like this.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Grant Farrar, Corporation Counsel. With respect to the enforcement issue, this is something that's popped up on everybody's radar in the last 3 months. So city staff really tried to take a aggressive approach in terms of the enforcement issue. And as Alderman Rainey quite accurately summed up, there were 2 ports of call, the Zoning Board of Appeals and federal court. In terms of the things that went on there, it's important to note that the federal court case is still ongoing. And there was much discussion had between myself, opposing counsel, and the court with respect to how the litigants, the parties, the city and the private homeowner wound up in court. As the case is still pending, I can't offer any comment upon that. Suffice to say, we respectfully disagree with the court's interpretation and direction. There was also another issue that was related to the enforcement, and it was on a simple nuisance provision, which is a very open-ended provision of the code that says issues such as noise, traffic, litter are nuisance violations. Unfortunately, for various reasons, the city was unable to get any traction relative to that issue as well. So I think that based upon the very energetic comment had by the council at the last meeting and the citizens that have come and the volume of information that was provided to us, I think it's really important at this point to sit down and do a really comprehensive look at this issue, because what would be very counterproductive is to try another enforcement action that, while having every good intention in the world and having the assistance of several of the arguments advanced tonight behind it, may still run into the same issue relative to not being received well, either in a court of law, by the Zoning and Board of Appeals, whatever the venue is. So I think at this point in time, since this is an issue that's been going on for 3 or 4 months, we've been able to have a couple of different insights into this issue relative to the different locations that are popping up in the city, the more information that we're gaining off the internet, and we're seeing exactly what's going on with this type of licensing, that's really critical at this point that the council gives staff direction and a global understanding to staff relative to where they fall on this ordinance and how far they want to take the enforcement.
Alderman Nguyen.
Well, I would like to understand better why, what Judge Shader's points were in terms of what he directed the city to do or not do. And then in keeping with Judge Shader's ruling, what is it that we as a city council can do to create an ordinance that prohibits vacation rentals?
Well, in terms of the public policy issue, I think that the legislative prerogative of the council to act in all situations remains free and clear. And obviously, we can craft an ordinance that incorporates the appropriate recitals, the appropriate case law, and also looking at best practices of other jurisdictions, which Mr. Griffin's department has already done. So there's no restriction on the city's ability to license, regulate whatever the will of the council is. Again, with respect to Judge Shader's commentary, I'm not really at liberty to talk about it. However, I will note that the transcript of the remarks, I believe, was attached to the brief that was submitted by the citizens group tonight, and there's 12 pages. I mean, you can read the judge's commentary and direction to staff, and I was the only one there. So I know exactly what he said. I know what the disposition of the court was, and the main thrust of his point was that he was inclined to see a much more measured and comprehensive set of regulation, if that was indeed the will of the council, as opposed to a piecemeal enforcement of existing law. I don't think existing law right now adequately touches on every single issue that is invoked by this vacation rental scheme. And in terms of enforcement, the best way to enforce is to have a good ordinance. And that's what staff, I think, is prepared to take up with the council's direction, and also hearing the comments of the citizens.
Oh, Madam Chair, I would say that I would be very much in favor if, because of the district court's ruling, we are in this particular place that we are, which we may disagree with, that we should move forward with speed to create an ordinance that prohibits vacation rentals and determine what the time period is, as Alderman Rainey has suggested, if we do want to have a time period. But I will also say that I do think the arguments are, all on point with the difficulties with B&Bs. The neighbors not knowing whether they're going to have a B&B or commercial establishment or vacation rental next door to them. B&B operators don't screen people. B&B operators don't necessarily have to be present when someone comes. They don't have to serve them breakfast if they don't want. Someone can stay a single night. They can stay a number of nights. The folks who live on the street have no idea who's coming in. So I think it's precisely the same problem. It just has a different label.
Alderman Wilson, then Alderman Grover.
Thank you. I would like I guess my direct request for direction would be to have some sort of analysis prepared as to the legality of a ban on vacation rentals. So just to ensure that we have done the appropriate research to make certain that we're not trying to pass something that we can't pass. And then I would be interested in seeing what the ban ordinance draft would look like. I do think that this is very different than a bed and breakfast, and I absolutely would not want this ordinance to include bed and breakfast. I think it's been pretty well set forth what we're talking about. I think that what we ended up with is for lack of a better term, there's a gap in what we can enforce and what we can do by way of use of property, and it's appropriate to fill that gap. So my request would be that we do the research, ensure that we draft a legal and enforceable ordinance, but I would like to see one, what it would look like to propose a ban for these types of uses.
Alderman Grover.
Thank you again, Chair Fisk. I guess I'm really heartened to get the sense of this committee, at least, that there's a real interest in banning these short-term rentals altogether, not just regulating them. The question for me is, do we do it through zoning? Do we do it through business regulation? What would be the most effective enforcement mechanism? And we'll rely on Mr. Farrar to help us with that.
Alderman Rainey.
To Alderman Grover's point, I think it would be a bad idea to make any statement regarding banning short-term rentals or vacation rentals at this time until we find out the legalities of that. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to go on record as saying that yet.
Okay, I just have a couple of comments. In conversations on this issue with residents, I too have been struck with the comparisons between Bs and Bs and the vacation rentals. My understanding, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that on occasion the property owner in question may or may not be present, that there is facilities, including a microwave in the room, should someone want to prepare their own breakfast. They certainly know who's coming because they register on Airbnb or on Craigslist. So I think Alderman Nguyen is absolutely correct that this, while we may not want to call this a B&B, the only difference that I can really see is that this is unlicensed. And the concerns of your fellow neighbors who do not live in your neighborhood, but your fellow neighbors in Evanston who have had to deal with the issue of a B&B over many months has been the same issues that you have. As Alderman Nguyen appropriately said, unknown people coming into the neighborhood on a short-term basis, just general disruption to the neighborhood, and that people don't want to move in and live next to a commercial establishment. So I'm hoping that we can, at least when this comes back for discussion, consider folding the B&B ordinance and the vacation rental ordinance, at least having a discussion, a side-by-side discussion of both of them together. Alderman Rainey, who's going to disagree with me?
On the point of the similarity, they are not. In a vacation rental, the tenant has absolute control of the property while they're there. Every single facet of the property that is not locked and preventing them from accessing it. They have control of the basement. They have control of the yard. They have the control of the front yard. They have control of the curb. They have control of the entire house. We're not talking about a microwave in a bedroom. We are talking about full control of the house. They can have anybody there that they want at any time of the day or night. There's no supervision whatsoever. And I would be willing tonight I was unaware that there wasn't a requirement that there be supervision at a bed and breakfast. But I'll tell you, if I'm going to pay $250 a night or $300 for a bed and breakfast, and I get there and there's not supervision and everything's not clean and tidy and there's not breakfast for me, I will go on Yelp and I will blast that bed and breakfast, as will every other guest there. So there's a big difference between a bed and breakfast as we know it. Now, not the bed and breakfasts that we've allowed to go unregulated and unlicensed, and some of you have even had good relationships with those, that's a different story. That's our fault. Shame on us. We allowed it to happen because of the people running them were our friends. In this case, the people running vacation rentals are our neighbors, and they don't seem to care what it is that they're doing. We keep hearing about one vacation rental where the person lives in the house and is renting rooms. Why is that not a rooming house? Why do these families keep being told that there's no regulation governing that? We have a rooming house license, and I know, Alderman Fisk, we'd be hearing from you if it weren't being enforced, right? We regulate rooming houses. These folks are talking up on the north end of town about a classic rooming house. Why isn't that a simple case? Why is that being considered a vacation rental and not a rooming house?
Well, I can tell you a couple of things. First of all, in my ward, we do have some licensed rooming houses that are very well run, but they're licensed.
Right.
They are licensed.
But why isn't this one subject to that license? We don't need to reinvent the wheel for this issue that we keep hearing about where the lady's renting out this room and that room.
Well, what if this lady applied for a B&B license?
But that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and what if she applied for
We're talking about a rooming house. It sounds like a classic rooming house. The neighbors have told us it sounds like a rooming house.
But it doesn't sound to me like the neighbors would encourage this woman to take the extra step of applying to be a B&B.
Well, we don't know what's going on there, and I would think, and this is for our legal department or our property standards, we need to take a look at what's going on at that house. I know that the vacation rental on my block is supposedly rented to a family or to two families. And so, but in this case, we know it's being rented out by the room, whereas the one on my block is rented out, the house is rented out. So I think renting out rooms in a house sounds to me like a rooming house.
Sounds to me like a B&B
that's
unlicensed.
I would like to hear from our staff what our staff has done to inquire about this operation. Sounds like a business of a rooming house.
Okay, what has our staff done?
And if it is a classic rooming house and we have a license for that and it is being done properly and, that we have a law that says you can have a rooming house in certain districts.
In so many words, and Grant, can go into the particulars, that's exactly what we tried, and that's what we got struck down with. We cited them, we gave them violations.
The rooming house?
The Dobson case.
No, that's not a rooming house. That is absolutely not a rooming house. The one I'm talking about is the one where they're talking on the north end of town about, what's the number?
2515.
Right, where the lady lives in the house and rents out rooms. Mm-hmm. That's very different than what's happening on Dobson. So could we take all I'm asking is could our staff take down the address and look into that as demanding that she apply for the license or cease and desist?
Sure.
Yes, we can do that. We can get into that. But again, what we're suggesting tonight, and that's what we're throwing out to the committee, is do you want us to explore the combination of zoning and licensing as a way to deal with this, to make sure that I's are dotted and T's are crossed as we go and try to deal with this, including what we can ban, what has to be allowed by some due consideration, et cetera?
I'd like to separate out this particular house to determine whether or not it is a rooming house or not. It sounds like it meets...
I'm a little bit confused about whether there are one or two houses on the block. It sounded from...
It's one house.
There's one house on the block, okay. Alderman Holmes.
Well, I'm a little concerned that we are going to do this piecemeal, and we're doing it house at a time. I don't think that's the way to go. I think that we really need to look at the different situations that seems to be occurring in Evanston in this last year. We have the B&Bs, which is one thing, and then we have the short-term vacation rentals, which sometimes can be renting out a house and sometimes can be renting out a room in your house. So to me, it seems like we have three different things to look at, and I think that that is the way that we have to approach it rather than looking at each individual address. I really sympathize with the people on Ashland, and I understand that, but I don't think that we can create a law just to take care of one house. I think we need to look at it all and come back with something, you know. Oh, absolutely, and I think that that is one of the things that we have to let people know, that we now know that there are lots of houses being rented and lots of rooms being rented out in homes, and that we will find a way to enforce that and to come up with something on the books that can be enforceable. So,
I just found one a block from my house.
Alderman Nguyen, or Alderman
No,
Wilson?
I just found a lovely rooming house on Airbnb a block from my house.
Alderman Wilson.
Come have a party there.
I've had a coffee there.
I was just going to make a motion that we have the staff prepare the research to identify what we can and can't do by way of banning or restricting the uses, and report back with a proposed ordinance if banning these uses is legal, but with the accompanying memoranda that tells us what we can and can't do.
Okay.
with all different types, because I think
Right, with the contingencies, as Alderman Holmes said, with the different alternatives. I don't just want one, option. I want the alternatives presented.
Okay, Alderman Grover wanted to speak.
Yes, thank you. Could it also include analysis of our rooming house ordinance and boarding houses and how those do or do not already apply?
Yes,
What we've
I think
got.
that's necessary, because I think what we have to do is identify exactly where the gap is and figure out what the gap is and what needs to be closed.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of our agenda on planning and development tonight. Are there any items for any other items? No. Okay. Then is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Oh, and I'm sorry, was there a motion? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you very much. City Council will begin at 8:15. That's about 7 minutes from now.